I would attend the movies with my brothers and sisters and my first cousins. It would be a group of us. It was a happening.
Well, now you got to remember now, in this community where the theater was a focal point, we not only had the theater, you had food, popcorn, hot dogs, sandwiches, those kinds of things in the theater. It was my job not only to clean up, but to help set up for the customers when they came in. And that's how I got to see the movies.
We had pecan trees, and we could pick up enough pecans and sell the pecans, and you would get money to go to the movie.
Theaters, though, might cross a wide range from the big city picture palaces downtown for well-heeled folks who had the 35 or 50 cents to attend in Atlanta, like the Loews Grand or the Fox, which opened in the early 1930s, to older, slightly more neighborhood theaters like the Rialto here in downtown Atlanta, or for the black community, the theaters along Decatur Street, which might have that same feature program, the film, the comedy short, the newsreel, the cartoon, might also have an act or two of vaudeville on stage. Somebody might be singing, a band might be playing.
The classes would see the films at the Royal on Auburn Avenue. The masses would go to the 81 Theater on Decatur Street, at 81 Decatur Street. And there at Decatur, at the 81 Theater, you would have live stage shows in addition to the film program. Sometimes you just have live shows and no films at all. So they were appealing to different classes of black Atlantans at the same time that you have the segregation between black and white.
But in the African American community, say here in Atlanta, in Nashville, in the major cities, you did have some theaters that was predominantly African American.
So there was a big debate in certain circles of the black Atlanta community. Do we go climb the stairs, the long staircase outside of the Fox, the Ponce de Leon entrance, and sit in the balcony? Or do we wait and give our business to a theater that, although white-owned, used black managers and catered to black Atlantans?
Well, there have been black movie going from the very start. A variety of things. Black ministers were traveling all over the South and the East Coast to black churches with biblical stories and other moralistic tales and showing them as part of their sermons. There were black Nickelodeons having to show pretty much at the time the standard fare that was available. More films for the black community began to be created sort of after the time of Birth of a Nation and sort of in reaction to it, or in as separate black theaters and the black movie audience started to grow, both in the urban South and in the North.
One of the interesting things about the black theaters in Atlanta was that in a lot of cities, in a lot of southern cities, the black theaters would not get the main Hollywood fare until months later. One study, the Black Negro as Southern Consumer, talked about a delay of, say, 6 months between the time a Class C MGM film would show in a white theater and then it would be shown in a black theater. But Atlanta, because it was a distribution hub, because of all the train lines, which are what made Atlanta into a major city, actually allowed, because the films would show at white theaters and then they would be at the exchange office and not being used, they could go over to the black theaters. And so you could have the black premiere of a film in Atlanta as little as 2 weeks after the white premiere. So that was something really special and extraordinary.
I think it had a psychological effect, something that I would never ever forget. And it probably made me much more determined than anything to become a fighter and a warrior against segregation and racial discrimination in the American South.
And for African Americans, it was a bit of a different experience. You had to walk up the staircase, up several stories on the outside of the building to be able to get to the small entrance.
The blacks would sit upstairs in the balcony area, and the whites were downstairs. which is really not a good place to be if you're, got me sitting up here in a crappy environment, and you got me up there with drinks and popcorn, and you down here, So there was a lot of times that a lot of the kids would throw popcorn and ice over the balcony. Who did it? You don't know who did it. And sometimes it would come from all the way in the back. It wasn't like it was that big of a balcony anyway. I guess there might have been about 10 or 15 rows there.
When we went to the concession stand, there was a little window that we went to, and they were handing stuff out the window to you, and then you go back upstairs.
Seats much less nice, more crammed together, not as plush as the one downstairs. And you were way up in the bird's nest or other.
The relation of having to go upstairs and sit in what some people refer to as the buzzard roost.
And then you'd have to walk
No,
upstairs.
you enter through a side entrance, and as soon as you walk in the door, the ticket, everything, only two people could stand inside the door at one time. That's how close it was.
Matter of fact, when I came to Atlanta in 1963, I did attend a theater or two here. The Rialto is right across the street in downtown Atlanta. There was a theater called Lowe's. That's where we had the premiere Going with the Wind.
And it was a long time before I knew that the owner had to buy those films, So he made up his money not only in the showing of the film. That's why he was selling all the foods, I noticed it was unusual because I don't know many places that sold hot dogs and hamburgers and sandwiches. Now I knew folk sold popcorn, but he sold the whole gamut. I mean, from the candy, and the hot dogs were famous. He had some kind of sauce he would put on them hot dogs, and you smell that popcorn, and you smell them hot dogs, Doc. Sometimes I think a lot of people went there just to get the hot dogs and the popcorn.
It was almost like attending a mass meeting when the good people prevail. Sometimes the audience would cheer and people would applaud. And that was very encouraging to see the impact that a film would have. But I also seen and been at theaters and there be such powerful action where there is a conflict between what people would think right and wrong or good and evil. And people would show some emotion.
That was High Noon. High Noon. I remember when High Noon came out with Gary Cooper. And man, that was, folk, they wanted to see that, And that was, and for Western, you got to remember the time era I was in, the Westerns was big.
So, and I wasn't the kind that got all excited and emotional in movies where I would be worried about my conduct or the way people were going to see how I act or anything like that.
Got off on that. And then the monster, man. The monster in our day was Frankenstein. And Lon Chaney. The Wolfman. And when you got Frankenstein and the Wolfman and Bela Lugosi, the Dracula guy, that was the fright for our time.
Of the newspaper, there was always a page about entertainment and a lot of ads, a lot of pieces that were lifted from press kits for the movies, not necessarily addressed to the black audience, but they would sort of cut and paste and add things in. And the best example of this is the 1934 Imitation of Life.
Imitation of Life, that's the one. That's the one, Imitation of Life.
I did think about Imitation of Life.
It really had a profound impact on many of us growing up.